9/11 changed the United States of America forever, and its victims, their final goodbyes might just change you.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Beverly Eckert told the story of her last phone call with her husband, Sean Rooney, to multiple outlets. He was working in the South Tower of the World Trade Center, and when the second plane hit, he was around 20 floors above the impact zone. When he talked to her, he told her that he was on the 105th floor and the building was quickly filling with smoke. The phone call later would be the last time they would speak. At first, he had been documenting his attempts to escape the building. Then she recalled the StoryCorps. We stopped talking about escape routes, and then we just began talking about all the happiness we shared during our lives together. As the smoke got thicker, he just kept whispering, "I love you," over and over. Then I heard a sharp crack followed by the sound of an avalanche, and it was the building beginning to collapse. I called his name into the phone over and over. Post 9/11, Eckert became one of the most vocal activists for the rights of victims' families, and in 2009, she was killed in the crash of Continental Connection Flight 3407. She had been going home to Buffalo to join her family for what would have been her husband's 58th birthday. No amount of training could have prepared the flight crews of 9/11's 4 hijacked planes for what they were going to face that day, but according to the findings put together by the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States, it was the actions of several incredibly brave members of the flight crew that allowed authorities on the ground to figure out what had happened thousands of feet in the air. One of those crew members was Madeline Amy Sweeney, a flight attendant on American Airlines Flight 11. She got in touch with the Boston office of the American Flight Services offices, and then, along with her colleague, she relayed the seat numbers of the hijackers. The call was connected at 8:29, and at 8:44, after relaying vital information to the ground and manager Michael Woodward, she said, "Something is wrong. We are in a rapid descent. We are all over the place. We are flying low. We are flying very, very low. We are flying way too low. Oh my God, we are way too low." 2 minutes later, the plane hit the North Tower. 20 years later, Sweeney's then 25-year-old daughter Anna spoke to WCVB Boston about the importance of her last communication, saying that her mother's calmness under extraordinary pressure had made her into a hero.
Not just for me or my family, but clearly for other people as well. And that's something that I'm very proud of.
Ryan David Sweeney was an ex-U.S. Navy pilot and one of the passengers on the hijacked United Airlines Flight 175. After the hijacking, he was able to place a call to his wife of just 2 years, Julie Roth. She shared the message with the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, saying that his words gave her the strength to carry on living because she knew that's what he would have wanted her to do.
The plane has been hijacked, and things will go well, and it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good.
He continued by saying,
So happy to time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you, and I'll see you later.
Ross says that she could hear it in his voice that he knew how things were going to end, and says that his need to reach out and console her allowed her to accept the fact that continuing to honor his memory and sacrifice could come along with her own embrace of life. She went on to remarry and have 2 children. It took Tom Burnett's children 20 years before they could visit the memorial in a Pennsylvania field, marking the spot where United Airlines Flight 93 crashed after a group of passengers stood up to the hijackers in an attempt to take control of the plane. Tom was among that small group, and his wife, Dina, told NPR News, "When he told me that he was going to do something, that everything would be okay, and he was coming home that night, I had no reason not to believe him." Placing a series of 4 phone calls to her between 6:27 and 6:54, Tom started by telling her that the plane he was on was hijacked and a passenger had been killed. Dina said other planes had been hijacked as well and recalled Tom's realization that they had been caught in the midst of a suicide mission. During the 3rd phone call, Dina believed for a moment that he had survived the Pentagon crash, but the 4th would be their final conversation. According to a transcript of that final phone call via the Tom Burnett Family Foundation, Tom explained, "We can't wait for the authorities. I don't know what they could do anyway. It's up to us. I think we can do it." She asked what she could do, and he responded with, "Pray, Dina, just pray." She told him that she loved him, and before hanging up the phone, he answered, "Don't worry, we're going to do something." Trapped on the 92nd floor of the North Tower, Tom McGinnis called his wife Ileana in the final moments before the tower's collapse. She was one of the dozens of family members who spoke to the New York Times in 2002, saying that not only would the moments of the last phone call stay with her for the rest of her life, but she wanted to know precisely what had happened leading up to that catastrophic collapse. That collapse happened at 10:28, and Tom was on the phone with Ileana at 10:18. He told her candidly how bad it was, saying, "We're on the 92nd floor in a room we can't get out of." He gave her the names of the people he was with and told her, "I love you. Take care of Caitlin." She was unwilling to say goodbye and unwilling to hear anything that suggested he had given up, and he explained, "You don't understand. There are people jumping from the floors above us." He repeated his love, and although she begged him not to hang up, he told her, "I got to get down on the floor." It was the last thing he said before the call dropped, and 2 minutes later, the tower fell. Jack Grancolis didn't pick up the phone when his wife called. The ringer in the bedroom was off, and it was only when he got up and turned on the television that he saw the news and realized the world had gone terribly wrong. She had left 2 messages. The first, that she was opting for an earlier than planned flight home. The second, "Honey, are you there? Jack, pick up, sweetie. Okay, well, I just wanted to tell you I love you. We're having a little problem on the plane. I'm totally fine. I just love you more than anything. Just know that. It's just a little problem. I just love you. Please tell my family I love them too. Bye, honey." The flight she had booked was the ill-fated Flight 93 that would crash in Pennsylvania, killing all on board. When Jack spoke with NPR 20 years later, he said that he was still struggling daily and still processing. It wasn't just the loss of his wife, but of their child. Lauren had been pregnant when she was killed, and alongside her name, etched into the Flight 93 National Memorial, are the words, "an unborn child." It was American Airlines flight attendant Betty Ong who first made contact with authorities on the ground after the hijacking of Flight 11. In 2021, her brother Harry spoke with KTVU News, revealing that their father had always held on to hope that she would be found alive. He held on to that hope until his death in 2007, even though Betty's remains had been recovered and laid to rest in a family cemetery plot. Not all of Betty's conversation with the ground was recorded that day, and according to FBI transcripts, the ground crew was still scrambling to catch up with what was going on in the air when the recording cut out. The end of the conversation was recounted by a member of that ground crew with a redacted name, who said that after relaying information about the passenger who had been stabbed, at that point she was just saying, "Oh my God, the flight, it's going down, it's going down." When asked to clarify if those were her last words, he added, "Basically, we're going down. Yeah, and she did ask us to pray for her." 2 decades later, her brother still struggled with the fact that no one got to say goodbye.
Very difficult to move forward. It's just not easy.
Stephen Mulderry was an equities trader who worked in the South Tower. His brother Peter was one of the people who spoke with the New York Times in 2002 and helped reconstruct the last moments of the victims of 9/11. He said that when they spoke, occupants of the South Tower had been assured that they were secure, and it was oddly like business as usual, adding, he said, "I got to go. The lights are ringing and the market is going to open." After the second plane hit his building, Mulderry called his mother Anne. She had been out, first at yoga and then at the post office, when she first heard about what was going on. When she got home, she told The Guardian that's when she saw there was a message left on the answering machine. He was panicking and getting words backwards, saying, "A building went into my plane. I just want to tell you that I love you. I'll be all right, and I'll call you. I love you." Even though a neighbor had made copies of the message, Anne said it took her a long time to be able to listen to it again, adding, "I didn't want to face the fear again. There was a catch in his voice that allowed me to know that he knew he was facing death." The events of 9/11 might be an inarguable part of American history today, but as events unfolded, it's easy to forget that no one really had any idea just what was happening and what the extent of the attacks was going to be. That said, it's both surprising and not surprising at all that USA Today confirms that there is no actual complete transcript of the phone call between Todd Beamer and GTE airphone operator Lisa Jefferson. Jefferson's official briefing is in the National Archives catalog, and in it, she describes how Beamer's report of a hijacking set off a chain reaction that included alerting authorities like the FBI. Beamer described the hijackers, the state of things in the plane, and relayed the fact that both the pilot and co-pilot had been dragged from the cockpit and lay bleeding on the floor. He relayed his own home phone number and asked that his family be contacted. And although part of the transcript is redacted, it's around there that he reported that some of the passengers were getting ready to storm the cockpit. When someone nearby asked if he was ready, she reported that he responded, "Okay, let's roll." The phone remained connected for the next 15 minutes. By the time the call was disconnected, the plane had already crashed. In the years following 9/11, Beamer's last words were turned into everything from the title of his wife's book to a slogan for Florida State. When Honor Elizabeth Wainio boarded Flight 93, it was for a business meeting. She worked for Discovery Channel stores, where she'd risen through the ranks incredibly quickly. That required regular flights, as even though she had moved to New Jersey, her friends and family were still back in Maryland. Wainio was one of the passengers who managed to make a phone call during the hijacking. She spoke to her stepmother, who recalled her final words, "They're getting ready to break into the cockpit. I have to go. I love you. Goodbye." 20 years after the hijacking that took the life of his daughter, Ben Wainio explained to NPR that every year when the anniversary of the attacks rolled around, it wasn't a day of remembrance for him. Instead, it felt like they were burying their daughter and saying goodbye all over again. He added, It gets difficult to relive how that day ended. It's never difficult to talk about Elizabeth because I love her and I miss her so much.